Hello, this is the RPG Pundit, the final boss in, well, you know what. Meatball is upstairs, lounging around up there. I don't know what she's doing. She might come back here because she usually shows up when I'm doing reviews on this table, so it's likely. Today, I'm doing a review of Wretched Space by The Red Room. Some of you will have heard at this point The Red Room, specifically Miguel Ribeiro. You may have heard that The Red Room has recently been deplatformed, I guess you'd say, by DTRPG. They had published a game that they say was, well, it's written by somebody using a pseudonym, and it was a game called Men, and it was very clearly, they say it's a satire. It is, but it's clearly a send up with elements of politically influenced mockery of kind of feminism, in the same way that, like the Chad memes are and stuff like that. They got that the product was suspended, and then they complained about it in social media, and then their whole publisher was removed from drive-thru on the hostile marketing argument. Which, to be fair, I saw the tweets from before they were ever suspended, and it was very clear that they were they were doing this marketing from the point of view of, oh, this book is so is going to be so offensive to feminists and what have you, that it's going to, like, those aren't their exact words, right? But there was very clearly this sense in how they were promoting it. Like, I think something very close to their exact words was something like, we'll see how long it takes before this book is banned, or something like that. So there was an element of hostile marketing going on. But anyways, it's a pity that Red Room is no longer on drive-thru, but they are available. All of their products, as far as I know, are available on the Big Geek Emporium. I'm presuming that Wretched Space is one of them. And this is the hardcover version of Wretched Space. And as you know, if you've watched previous reviews of different books in the Wretchedverse series, they make a whole kind of cinematic universe, I guess you could say, of different genres, all based on a single underlying concept, which is kind of the spaghetti Western style of, the bad and the ugly, right? Never mind the good. So it's like, dark takes on all of the genres that they engage in, but not dark like grimdark, but rather dark like the more morally questionable universes of spaghetti Westerns. So, but this is their book basically on space opera, so it's of course very interesting to see how it compares with my own book, Star Adventure. One thing that it very clearly compares is that it's much, much thicker, right? Wretched Space is 300 and some pages long. 307 pages long, not counting the character sheet at the back. And Star Adventure is like 30, right? So it's a much, much smaller, but very compact rule set. That's why it's a best-selling product. People love Star Adventure, but it doesn't have any inherent setting in it. Wretched Space does have an inherent setting in it. And it also has more room to develop more material. So it's got more additional stuff that I didn't put in Star Adventure to keep it small and cheap, right? So let's take a look at how they compare and whether they're compatible and how useful they could be with each other, among other things. And also, of course, how Wretched Space fares in and of itself. So in all of the Wretched series, the default assumption of the setting is that you are playing scoundrels, right? You're playing morally dubious people. Now, there's no reason why you absolutely must keep that. Like, you don't have to do it that way, right? But that's how they like to do it. So you could just ignore those parts. Gives you here some brief filmography, which is pretty much everything under the sun, so it's not very specific, I think. And this is an OSR game, of course, so character creation, you start with the 6 stats, and then here's the first significant change here, is that you have transgressions that you will pick, right? So instead of, say, picking an alignment, you pick which of the 7 deadly sins is your character's preferred one, right? And so you get bonuses to experience points, I believe, if you play that out. The more effectively you play it out, the more bonus XP you get, which is good. I mean, like, but there's no reason you couldn't change that, for example, if you really wanted to the 7 cardinal virtues, right? It's up to you. Rolling for character, these guys have methods other than 3d6 in order, which already makes them incredibly hippie for for most OSR standards. So, surprising to see the Red Room going that route, but they do that. They've put that in all their games for some reason. Oh, that's a battery alert. All right. I guess I'm not going to do a very long review today. Hit points, everything, and all the basic OSR stuff is the same. You can play other races besides humans. They have racial requirements, and the races it's stated here that the races are not necessarily going to be canonical to any future products. So these are more there as an example. Now, in my game, in Star Adventure, I put races as these kind of archetypes of, like, the spacefaring race, the brute race, the warrior race, the scientific race, etc. And then, like, I didn't put in any details about what that race looks like or anything. That's the idea is you pick the races you want to have in your campaign as the DM. Here are the kind of skeletal archetype of what these different archetypal sort of races would be, right? So, like, the warrior race could be Mandalorians, or it could be Klingons, right? Or it could be neither of the above. It could be something else, right? But the idea is that you can then just apply those. Here, instead, they have specific races that have in some cases, quite long backstories, right? Like the Adidian, that are, nevertheless tend to represent certain archetypes, right? The Adidians are the incredibly ancient progenitor race of the galaxy. The Dolfar are the weirdos that are always in a suit, and what are their mysteries? That sort of thing, right? You've got the weird nature worshipping primitives, your standard human. We've got, like, hipster Luke Skywalker there. You've got a mix between the Greys and the Reptilians there. You have green skin tough guys. Flying guys. So at dog people. And anyway, so those are the character races. They each get some specific special abilities. Next, you will pick a character class, and some classes have multiple archetypes to choose from. So, for example, the assassin has as its archetype hired gun and serial killer, right? 2 different archetypes there. But the common citizen doesn't have anything, right? And the cyborg as a class doesn't have any specific archetypes. So conjurer and shaman are present as an optional class. You have investigator, which includes bounty hunters and Federation agents and private eyes. So that one's got like 4 archetypes. Reporter, sorry, forgot about the reporter there. Man of action, that includes like the gunslinger, the street samurai, the war veteran, pilots, proselytizer, which includes cult leader and politician. I kind of like that. Psionic, the rogue, with this colorful figure here as the rogue. All of the art is I think all of the art, maybe except the cover. I don't even know. But anyways, I know that a large part of the art is AI generated, but they did it very well, so it looks quite good. I mean, also the binding, the quality of the paper, it's all good. Of course, I'm assuming this is the drive-through version, so I have no idea. I mean, Big Geek Emporium does their print on demand from Lulu, I think, so the Lulu's also always good. I mean, good enough anyway. Yeah, you've got the rogue, the scholar, and that's basically it. So character classes, the tables, as you can see, we're talking about pretty standard old school D&D type, except that there's a skill system, and of course some classes have special abilities, like the shaman or conjurer has rituals, the psionic has powers. Now that leads you. Well, I'll talk about it when I get to the psionic points. But look at this. This is the table of psionic talents per level, right? So it looks very similar to a wizard table of tables of spells per level, right? Combat. Hang on, no, sorry. This is additional stuff. So you've got perks and drawbacks. So you're allowed to pick one perk, if I'm remembering correctly. And a perk can be something very basic, like +2 to persuasion, or +4 to acrobatics, or stuff like that, or immunity to a toxin, or being a member of an institution. And then you could choose a second one, but if you choose a second one, you have to choose a drawback. And so drawbacks are things like, addiction, bad luck, infamy, obsessive compulsive disorder. Geez, I'm wondering if they picked anything that's like really controversial here and I just missed it. But no, it doesn't really look like it. With the Red Room, you always got to kind of watch for those sort of things, I guess. But no, there's nothing weird there. But I mean, I'm not a big fan of those kinds of, special stuff that you can pick from a list. That tends to always slow down character creation, for starters. And then it also, there's inevitably going to be some smartass who's going to use it to min-max, right? Have a very minimal drawback in exchange for a pair of perks that put together make him very, very above average, let's say. So not a fan. Skill list is pretty standard. Nothing too curious there. Skills are done by rolling a d20, modifying the skill level and the ability score. It's pretty much exactly the same as in my games. And the listing of skills is quite normal. So there's nothing too strange in any of this. Here we have the larger description of the perks and drawbacks. And experience points. You can see this is a traditional kind of experience point table there. This is added to, though, with certain wretched rewards, right? That if you behave foully, right? If you act selfishly, for example, that gives you 50 extra XP, right? If you so if you kill something, you get XP. That one's normal. Stealing things from other people, it gives you more XP. If you steal stuff from an NPC, a significant NPC who is a friend or a foe, right? Seducing someone gives you more XP. Acting narcissistically, surviving, and being devious and untrustworthy. So all of these, this is all to fit the kind of wretched verse aspect of it, and that's fine, right? Like it's actually reinforcing the genre. Again, this can just be ignored or rewritten to something other than vice if you want your characters to be heroic, for example. There's also something called the wretched level, which is like with the wanted level, which is like how infamous they are and looked for by the authorities. The mechanic for this is very, very basic. Probably could be expanded. Wretched pool. So if you do anti-heroic things, optionally, the DM can give you trades for bonuses in a roll. So by being a wretched person, you get some extra points that you can use to add to a D20 roll or what have you. Then we get to the combat section, which again is mostly very standard stuff. You can see that the armor tables are there for, what you have for different tech levels, including high-tech power armor and so on. Ways to customize your armor, etc. Morale is standard. Characters can be healed with first aid or medicine rolls. Natural healing restores hit points. All of this is very normal within the standard of the stuff. Then we get into a nice section with weird sci-fi drugs and alcohol. That's good stuff. Certainly, especially necessary for something like the Wretchedverse. You got random negative drug reaction stuff, drug addiction. So that's good to have included that in this setting. Other kinds of dangers: exposure to vacuum, exposure to radiation, called shots, aim shots, etc. We get to also the dueling system. Now, you've seen this in some of their other Wretched books. So you can choose to have, if you want to have a really cinematic type, Pistols at Dawn sort of, or High Noon sort of shootout, you can use this alternate system, which is based entirely on a roll of a D6 modified by Dex, modified by Quick Draw, and then comparing the results to each other in terms of injuries and whatnot. So, it's it's an interesting idea, and I can see how that can work in some highly cinematic type campaigns. But because it ignores all other kind of benefits that a character might have, or all other qualities, I would see it as not being all that useful for a kind of a more realistic kind of campaign, right? But of course, it totally fits the spaghetti Western, right? So in that sense, it makes sense, right? Then we have critical hits with critical hit tables. I would like to think that the Red Room was inspired by this just a little bit, at least, with the critical hit tables from Lion and Dragon. I don't know if that's true. I'd just like to think that. But, not a lot of OSR products actually have area-specific critical hits. And so this is one of them, though. Ironically, in Star Adventurer, I don't have the critical hit tables. Instead, you have critical hits going directly to wounds, directly to Constitution, rather. So, it's kind of funny that they did this for the sci-fi one, but I didn't for my sci-fi one. I did it for my fantasy one. But anyway, alien creatures. So these are monsters, not monsters, but alien animals and whatnot. Quite a few of them. I get the feeling that a lot of these are kind of just made on the fly, but that's perfectly fine. There's no reason why they can't be. Sentient foes, the various races that we've already covered. Things from the Beyond. The Beyond is their term for all the supernatural stuff. So if you're adding supernatural elements into the game. Gear and augments. I quite like this rules of acquisition thing, which is that, instead of purchasing stuff with credits or whatever, because it is, this is meant to be kind of a high space opera sort of stuff, you could have a roll basically a difficulty check to see if you can actually purchase something or not. That always has some cost in terms of believability, but it does sometimes fit the genre, right? And so you get modifiers depending on your social class and other potential perks or drawbacks that can determine whether or not you can actually afford to buy a thing, right? And so the acquisition, instead of a price, what you have is an acquisition difficulty. Cyber tech, so you can have cyber implants. That will include like prosthetic arms and legs, or stuff like a strength enhancer, built-in toolkit, stuff like that. Cyber link that allows you to interface with modems. I like how they have modems in their sci-fi thing. Yeah, quite a big selection of cybernetics there. Remember, cyborg is a class too, so yeah, it's a class. Yeah, is it? I'm trying to remember now if it was a class or a race or what, but it's something. It's in there. Vehicle and spaceship combat. Once again, I noticed there is like they have a quick cinematic maneuvering table, which is totally like a variant of their quick dueling table, which ironically I think fits better in some ways than the dueling table. And then they have, the starship combat part. And once again, I would like to imagine that there's a bit of inspiration from the ship to ship combat of Star Adventure here. Again, nothing particularly bad about that. Again, we've got like the critical hit table for starships, which I do have in Star Adventure. Looks quite similar. I mean, of course, it could be just similar design. So I'm not saying that they were directly inspired by Star Adventure, because this, obviously doing it in a way that looked like mine could also just be because this is the most sensible way to do it in an OSR context. They might just be as intelligent as me rather than having directly been inspired by me. I don't know. So, the system is quite good. It's about as good as the one I have. There are a few little differences. Now, one of the big differences is I only had enough room because, again, I wanted to make a very small product that had a lot of opportunity for the DM to expand on it, and that was very affordable therefore. Because remember, like Star Adventure is $9.99, right? It's really cheap. What they have is more room to put in examples. So you get a ton of starship types, which, it's not like it's hard to do that yourself, but it's often nice. I'll definitely acknowledge that it's nice to have a bunch of these already set up, right? Because then you don't have to even worry about them. You don't have to do anything about them except just look it up, and then you can just, you want an alien heavy cruiser. Well, there you go. That's everything you need, right? You don't have to do it yourself. So now we get to Psionics section. And in the Psionics section, you have a series of psionic powers. The introduction is just this, basically. There's no guidelines on what else you're supposed to do with it. So I presume that you have to use psionic powers basically identical to how you would use spells. The thing is, in a lot of OSR games, that's not how psionic powers work. Usually, including in AD&D originally, psionics was infamously quite different in style and much worse usually than the Vancian spellcasting. So in most OSR games, psionics are not treated exactly the same as spells. But here, there's no other instruction, right? So I'm assuming that, again, it's like spells per day. You have X number of powers that you can use in a day, and you have to pre-decide which ones they are or something like that, or maybe not, I don't know, but there was no instruction given, right? There's just the description of the psionic powers, but there's nowhere, unless I missed it somewhere, there's nowhere that explains what those powers, how those powers are worked out mechanically. Like, how many times can you use them per day? Do you have to pre-select them? Do you start with all of them? Do you get them from a list, or can you just keep using them unlimitedly? I don't know. There's no indication that you have to do any roll or that there's any cost to using them. So I'm guessing that it's being done as like a memorization system, but it doesn't say. So then we get to like magic and stuff, in case you want to include that in your space opera. And you have some serious side effects to playing around with magic, including like minor side effects, and then like derangements and stuff, and the price of magic. If you fail rolls trying to do magic, you can have moments of terror or existential panic, because all of this is like based in this idea of this kind of sinister force, the beyond, that is the fountain of all magic. But then fundamentally the spells are basically D&D spells, right? Like charm person, detect magic, protection, read languages. So they're done in the form of rituals. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, right? But it's not anything very original either. In my Star Adventure, I do not have magic. Of course, I got magic in Lion and Dragon that you could use if you really wanted to. I do have psionics, and in my Star Adventure, the psionics are done basically the same as my style of magic, but that is not Vancian magic. And of course, I explain how it works in the book. The supernatural in the Galactic Federation. This is some weird magic planet that they've got there that didn't make much sense to me, to be honest. I mean, it's presented as being like the most terrible place, and it really just looks like some kind of weird adventuring world. I don't see where I must have missed some part of that in my reading of it. But okay, so the basic default setting of Wretched Space is the Federation, but it's not the nicey, the captain. Hi, sorry, Meatball's over there. It's not the friendly Captain Picard Federation, right? Oh, here's Meatball. She came over when I signaled her. Wow. That's not all that common an occurrence. Hello, Meatball. So this is a federation that has been around for thousands of years, and it's become corrupt. Of course, she's sitting right on the book. It's become corrupt and self-serving, and it's basically at best inept, at most malevolent. Though your characters might potentially be working for the Federation. Oh, Meatball. You're such a meatball. You're so cute. She had a fun day outside today. There's also an Outer Rim, so as to shout out to Star Wars. And there are conflicts, of course, with the Federation in the Outer Rim. Your characters can potentially be part of the Federation agency, the security agency or whatever, and specifically part of a group called the Wretched Legion, which are guys that are basically criminals that are being given a chance to make up for it, going and fighting for the Federation in the Outer Rim, and they start with like a bunch of equipment, some of it quite crappy, and it's kind of like good luck, right? They're just sent out. There's also the Knights of Sidonia, which are basically like a kind of Jedi guys. And then you have other factions. So you have the Space Habsburgs, which I thought was very, very funny. The Habsburg Coalition. And then you have the Consortium, which is like a sort of utopian society in theory. The Blight, an interstellar criminal organization, you could say. The wide variety of other factions besides. There's also space samurais, apparently, like Sato Tokugawa. I should mention the Red Room are Portuguese and therefore do not give a damn about cultural appropriation or anything like that. Planets that are found in the Federation. You've got a good variety of them. Again, none of them are they're all very kind of stereotypical, you could say, but that's kind of what you would want, right? I think they could have probably skipped putting all of these planets on there because, again, none of this is it is a setting. It's a setting for you to play in, but it's not really a setting that is in some way, it's got some kind of crucial story to tell, right? It's just basically your excuse setting for this type of play, right? So the next section, they have world building tools where you have a bunch of random tables to generate space opera type planets. And they're fine as rules, as tables for generating space opera type planets. They'd have none of the like complexity that you'd see in like, Traveler or some of these other sci-fi games that want to have a realistic element to it. This isn't that. This is like, okay, this is the swamp planet, Dagobah, right? Or whatever. And then you just roll a d20 where, the chances are basically the same of whatever results there are. You roll for tech level, you roll for, government type, but it's all that no one thing modifies another. And the idea is obviously the DM will then just kind of rearrange anything that doesn't fit or anything that they don't want. Environmental anomalies, duration of weather effects, spaceports, sentient life forms, alien creatures, flora and fauna. And so anyways, they could have just skipped a lot of these worlds and just, put these planet creation rules, maybe even some extra random tables. I'm always a bigger fan of random tables than of examples, right? I'd rather have a table that says, random planet names instead of a bunch of planets that you just made up, plot hooks, making money. So there's stuff for like trying to arrange contracts and how much it'll earn you. Meatball. Bounty hunter jobs, some tables of like potential bounties that you can hunt. See, these are all quite good. The random tables are all quite good. Some of them are in some ways like a bit short, like you would wish that there was more of it. But other than that, it's, there's no other real complaint to be had about it. Cargo destination table, events on a ship table. That's a great one. Spaceport encounters. So these are all good. They're like, and I think that all of this stuff, in fact, a lot of the stuff in here, like the equipment too, because this is one of the wonders of the OSR, right? I'm looking at this. I'm currently running a Star Adventure campaign, have been for the last several years. It's basically a Star Wars campaign. And, ironically, the characters of my Star Adventure campaign are also these kind of, they would fit in the Wretched verse, right? They're all kind of scum, right? So it's funny that my Star Adventure book does not have the Wretched verse like moral ethos, but the campaign does. And so I'm looking at that and saying, how compatible would it be? And the answer is totally compatible, right? Like you put these together, they work fantastic, right? And you can say the same about a lot of other OSR books. I think Wretched Space, in terms of like creative space opera stuff, doesn't add something remarkably new, right? Like there's already other sci-fi OSR games that have that, right? Like it doesn't add anything revolutionary in its 300 pages that you don't get in my 30 pages of Star Adventure. What it does do is it adds more examples and stuff, and it also has a particular spin, which is that wretched spin, right? And so it adds a different type of morality dimension to it, which is quite interesting. And material-wise, it's quite good. So, whether you're looking for a space opera book or you're looking for a book that you could buy to support the Red Room, I would certainly recommend this product, right? If you're in the market, if you like OSR books, you like space opera books, you think you could use it, you could definitely pick it up. But while you're at it, also throw in another $10 and check out Star Adventure. And if Gonzo is more in your style, check out The World of the Last Sun, and now the second book in that series, which is the Gonzo Fantasy Companion. World of the Last Sun is a setting book, but the Gonzo Fantasy Companion is just a resource book full of weird fantasy stuff that you can add to your... The heck? Oh, you know what this is? This is a piece of some kind of a plant that remember I said she's been out all day? Yeah, she's now dumping bits of plant out here. Okay, that's great. It was stuck to your fur, huh? Yeah. All right. So anyways, I was saying the Gonzo Fantasy Companion is a resource book that you can add all kinds of science fantasy weirdness, post-apocalyptic stuff weird fantasy stuff into your OSR game. And that works for fantasy, but it can also work on a sufficiently weird space opera game, right? So check out the Gonzo Fantasy Companion, which, by the way, is already a bestseller, a copper bestseller on DriveThruRPG. So thank you to everyone who's already bought the Gonzo Fantasy Companion. This video has gone way over time, and I'm almost out of battery power. And as you can see, Meatball is approaching the ass-licking stage. So I think it is time to call it a day. Check out Wretched Space. I'll try to put a link to their section in the Big Geek Emporium in the description below. And check out all of my products. If you like this video, please share it anywhere you think someone will find it interesting. And hit like and subscribe if you haven't subscribed. And that's basically it. Currently smoking Near Up Egg plus Cornell and Deal's Old Joe Krantz, though I haven't actually lit it yet.